Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today I'm working on an art trade piece for my friend Ari. She recently started her own YouTube channel, so I will put a link to her channel on the screen on the upper right hand corner, as well as a link down below in the description along with her social media accounts. So I highly encourage that you guys go check her out and support her. She is both a digital and traditional artist. However, I am more familiar with her digital work since when I first met her many years ago, I was really big on digital art at the time, and so that was kind of the context in which we had become friends. But I believe her YouTube channel is going to focus more on her traditional art and her process of doing that. I'm going to show a few examples of Ari's digital art on the screen so you guys can see what her art style looks like in case you're not familiar with her. But as you can see, she's got such a gorgeous painterly art style, and I just love the way that she's able to create just a very soft, warm, and inviting atmosphere and mood in her pieces. So please check her out and share the love with her. She is an incredible artist and very supportive friend and an all-around just awesome person to know. So at the beginning of this video, I mentioned that this was an art trade that I'm doing with Ari. We decided that we would pick one of the other person's original characters or OCs and draw them, and then we would mail each other the finished piece. So we were kind of adding this pen pal component to it, and it was going to be a surprise as to which character the other person chose to draw. And so at the time that I'm posting this video, it means that we've already received each other's packages, so we already know which OC the other person chose. I decided to draw Ari's character, Lady, and it was just so refreshing to be able to draw not only a female character, but a character that was a lot more simple in terms of design compared to my own OC, since I feel like I tend to put a lot of complex, intricate, detailed work with my own characters. And so I was really able to take a break from that and just appreciate the simplicity of Ari's character. For this piece, I used my new Ohuhu 120 brush marker set, and I continue to love these markers so much. I know I gush about Ohuhu all the time in my videos, and I promise I'm not being sponsored by them. These are just my own opinions and experiences, but I'm just really happy with this expansion in their color variety. Granted, the 120 set does have all of the colors of the 48 set, but they also have the addition of skin tones and lighter colors and pastels, which is awesome because when I only had the 48 set, I had to supplement all the skin tones with my Copic markers, and so it's nice to be able to use just the Ohuhu markers rather than switching back and forth between that and my Copic markers. This piece was actually almost exclusively done with the Ohuhu markers, and I say almost because I actually got really lazy and used my gray Copic marker to color the sclera, or the white part of the character's eyes, only because the Ohuhu 120 set has like 23 gray colors, and at the time I really didn't want to look through my color chart to figure out which gray I wanted, so I just grabbed my Copic gray marker and used that. But I could have very easily used an Ohuhu gray tone marker, and this piece could have been done with just the Ohuhu 120 set. So with regards to this piece, if I had to choose a theme or a word to describe this overall process, I would say that this piece was incredibly experimental and very risky. So normally when I film, I have a general idea of what I want to do, and granted, there are some things where I just have to wing it and kind of figure things out, but I feel like with this piece, there was a lot of experimentation that I wasn't planning on doing and changes that I did on the fly or last minute. And honestly, I'm just very happy that despite all of this experimentation, it turned out really well, and I'm overall very proud of this piece. One of the areas where I did a little bit more improvisation than expected was Lady's skirt. I initially planned to only shade the 2 tension lines that I had drawn as part of the line art, but then once I had done that, I realized that it looked a bit too plain, and so I wanted to try to add a little bit more texture and depth to her skirt. While this would have been perfectly fine if I were doing a digital piece, it was actually very risky because with alcohol markers, it's not as forgiving, and so once you lay down the color, there's really very little you could do to fix any mistakes you might make. there's no Control Z and there's no undo option. And so I was taking that risk, especially because I feel like I still have a lot of room to grow in terms of being able to color fabric in a realistic way. And I basically just winged the whole thing and just tried to incorporate my experiences from digital art to traditional art with the alcohol markers. And while I feel like I could have done a much better job, at the same time I'm just really glad that it turned out looking somewhat normal and that I didn't botch it up. What I did end up making a mistake on was Lady's face, so I'm not sure if you guys caught it, but I accidentally shaded her nose a little bit too heavily, and that ended up making her nose look really big. And at this time when I was filming, I was freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh, I have messed up her face. And when you mess up a character's face, it is very difficult to ignore it. Like, it just stands out so much. But thankfully, the 120 set comes with a colorless blender, which is basically just clear alcohol ink, and you're able to kind of use it to remove minor blemishes. And so thankfully the ink was still very wet when I had made the mistake, so I went in with the colorless blender and kind of scrubbed it out and was able to essentially bleach out the color and tone it down enough that I could go over it again with the skin tone and fix it. And I'm super thankful that it worked out, because I would have been incredibly sad to have spent all of this time on this piece only to have messed up the face and to essentially ruin the entire drawing. Another area that I was more experimental on was the hair. And I feel like in the end I could have done a much better job had I had more practice with coloring hair in a traditional sense. I tend to do a lot of detailed work with hair when I'm coloring digitally, but again, because alcohol art and traditional art in general is not as forgiving, I didn't want to risk that with this piece, especially because I was giving it to Ari afterwards. And so I just went with a very simple choose a few colors for the hair and then just add some basic highlighting. And overall, I feel like it looks alright. I was kind of disappointed that for some reason I couldn't get really sharp strokes with the nibs. And so while you can't really tell from the video itself, the lines and the areas of the highlight transitioning to the colored part of the hair kind of seemed blunted. Like, I wasn't able to get sharp demarcations that kind of delineated between that transition. And so it was kind of disappointing, and I feel like I wasn't able to blend out the hair colors as well as I was hoping, but at the same time, it looks all right, and I'm hoping that with more practice, I'll be able to redeem myself, maybe in a future collab. One of my favorite parts when it came to experimentation was actually the roses, especially because they turned out unexpectedly very well. So originally I was just planning to color the roses with maybe a single tone as just the base layer and then add a shaded color and do very simple shading. However, I quickly realized just how beautiful of a gradient I was able to achieve with these two colors, especially with the ink being wet, and I was able to blend it out and get this really smooth transitioning gradient, and I feel like it really added a lot of depth and realism to the roses. And I was just so happy with the way it turned out. I feel like it might have redeemed the hair part since it just ended up looking so pretty. The one thing is that it was incredibly tedious, since I realized that if I let the ink dry, I probably would not have been able to get as smooth of a blended transition, especially because the shaded color is much darker than the base color. And so essentially I had to go through each petal one by one very painfully, but at the end I'm really glad that the hard work paid off. This does bring up an important point about the Ohuhu markers that I want to address. So after coloring the roses, I realized that my hand was really crampy and in some moderate pain from extended use of the Ohuhu markers. I don't know if it's because I'm a small person and have a small hand, but something that I've noticed is that because of the way that the barrel is shaped, so it's round and smooth, but it's not the most ergonomic like the Copic markers, and so even if you don't have a strong grip, I feel like when you're holding these markers for a long time, it just becomes very uncomfortable, and the marker actually puts a lot of pressure between your index and thumb in that kind of nook between the fingers. And I don't know if it's because of my size or if it's the design of the barrel, but I think it would be nice to see in the future for these markers to either have a thinner barrel or maybe a more oblong shape like the Copic marker, so that they're more ergonomic and comfortable to hold. And last but not least, the background was also an unexpected part of this piece. So I initially was planning to use purple as the background color, not only because purple is one of my favorite colors, but also because I feel like it matches very well with a lot of different colors. But after laying down the washi tape, I realized how nice brown would look, especially with the other warm colors like the pinks and the reds. And so last minute, I decided to change it to brown instead of purple. And I feel like it was a really good decision. I never would have thought to use brown as a background color, but it just matches so well with the pinks and the reds, and just the overall warm mood that it gives off is just really nice. I also decided to add a gold accent with my marker for the background to give it a little bit more pop. I did use this gold marker to draw Lady's necklace, which I don't know if you're going to be able to see on video because it's a very minute detail, but I thought that adding the gold accent in the background as well was a really nice finishing touch. It's funny because I was actually not planning to add any kind of gold accent, and it was really a spur of the moment kind of thing. I had seen the brown background and I was thinking, well, it looks a little bit too plain, so maybe if I add some gold, it'll look really nice. And it did. I actually based this design off of an old bullet journal spread that I had done, and I'm just really happy that it kind of translated into this elegant background, which I think is very fitting for a character like Lady. And so that brings us to the end of our video. Thank you again for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I definitely appreciate your continued support. And if you enjoyed this kind of content, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon if you want to be notified every time I upload a new video. And definitely don't forget to go check out Ari's artwork and her channel. All of that information is down below in the description. I hope you guys have an awesome rest of the day, and I will see you guys in the next video.